Hello, and welcome in, everybody. My name is Bryce Koon, and we're bringing it to you live, the post-game show, as we get ready to rock and roll. Had to change the microphone over. That's okay, though. We're live here on a Saturday afternoon, 2:53 Central, 3:53 Eastern, and we welcome you in to the Swarm Talk post-game show. We're going to be taking your calls for the last 10 minutes of the show. Wow. There's so many things that I want to talk about, and I'm going to open the phone lines after I get a chance to talk about those things. But this game was crazy. This game was nuts. And look, I'm going to get to this right here. Okay. I've started one comment. Ralph's not in the background. Will's not in the background. I'm running this solo today. Yes, there are things that need to be fixed with this team. There are things that have to be better. And look, for every single team in the country, there's things that you have to improve. But the fact that we're talking about, hey, yes, this team needs to improve A, B, and C. The fact that we're talking about that after a win and a 5-2 record, this is the best start in a really long time. This is, regardless of how the games have been won and what this game looked like, you can dive into it. You can get into the weeds of this football game. There were some ugly things. There were some things that need to be corrected. But folks, we're at a point in this program where we're being able to talk about this after a win and a 5-2 record. And it's what I talked about on Thursday. This wasn't going to be an easy game. You had a wounded animal sitting in the corner in UNC with a lot of pride, a lot of passion they were going to play with. And they fought and they battled. And there's a lot of keys that maybe you didn't hit on, but you still found a way to leave with a win. Now, that doesn't, absolve the questions that do need to be asked. Play calling to a certain extent. Are we going to be able to see the passing game really come to life? The Haynes King injury update, which I know a lot of people kind of want to know. But bottom line, I'm going back to the start comment. Papa Goat hits nail on the head. 5-2 in the future, the team isn't good. Unbelievable. It could be worse. You could have lost this game. You could have lost last week. And then we're talking about a losing record. So to me, it's just we sit here and, yeah, you can get frustrated. I'm going to look at the stats. I'm going to tell you things I liked, things I didn't like. But a win is a win. And I think Ramble On also says this pretty well, too. A win is a win, but there's a lot to be desired. And that's okay. It's okay to say both different things. We're all pumped that this is a win on the road. Once again, it's hard to win on the road, regardless of how many fans in the stands, the time of day, and the opponent. You have to go be able to do that. Georgia Tech gets an ACC win on the road for the first time this year. That's the big. It also allows for you to catapult yourself into a season where, yes, you've got 2 disappointing losses, but you also have still a ton to play for. And with how chaotic college football and the ACC can be, you have no clue what could happen, if you wanted to get to Charlotte. So if you just keep plugging along, we'll see what happens. 2 conference losses, I don't think it rules you completely out. So, good question. GT Boy says, Bryce, why are we making the same mistakes week after week? I don't know if I see a ton of improvement from weeks 2 and 3. It's a team, I would say, that is literally just trying to learn how to win and learn how to carry the badge of we're not always the underdog anymore. You can't keep preaching. How do you handle success? You had success last week. You've had success at times this season. How do you handle that? And I think that to me is something that all teams have to learn, and you're just seeing the growing pains of a young program with a young, and I mean in terms of his head coaching experience, a young head coach. I mean, look, folks, you just went up against a guy that's been coaching college football for 5,000 years. He's seen everything in the book. He's been in every single scenario. Brent Key, although he has a great plethora of resources to go to in terms of, hey, how do we deal with this? You can't understand how to deal with situations and how to lead your team until you've been in the trenches in that situation. And so, hey, look, here was another situation on a Saturday where you were in the thick of it. You started to implode. I think we can all sit there and say that. And you still found a way to win. And it's much easier to have those conversations in a win on Sunday in the film room than it is after a loss. And so you just kind of have to be, it's just the growing pains. Anyone who thought that this would just be some automatic, we're okay, we're good now, everything's great. That, and I had said it all off season, that was going to take a massive jump, in my opinion. But also, anyone who is overly negative or saying everything sucks, people need to be fired. There's questions, of course. I'm not talking about being fired, but there's questions about, hey, why is this doing this? I think it's just a young head coach in terms of his experience having to learn and go through the growing pains of being in situations he hasn't been before in that position. And he'll learn. And you hope that he learns as you're winning, which is what's happening right here, instead of learning as losing. So it is. Ralph says UNC was a 3.5 point lock until CGC blew it. Normally the Jackets would old school Falcon the situation, just saying as well. So, hey, at least we covered the best bet. Best bet covered. Dr. Bob put me down. I don't have time to get all the comments. We got over 200 people watching live. I appreciate you. If you want to get your comment in here, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you and just be honest with you. The best way, since I'm running solo, is to get in a super chat. You don't have to do some crazy amount of money. Get in a super chat. If you want to get that comment, we can obviously look at it and get it to the top. But if you're not, wait till we open the phone lines. You can call in. Okay, so a couple things. I mentioned this, and here's the biggest part of this whole story to you. Do you remember when I talked about that you couldn't let Jacoby Criswell be comfortable? And look, it shouldn't really surprise people that he looked competent out there. The kid was a 4-star talent at the very least. I don't think he pushed a 5-star, but he was a 4-star talent, I believe. And he has talent. This is also something he arrived in North Carolina for, as a freshman, transferred to Arkansas, comes back. And there's just a lot of different things that he was obviously trying to go to, but he had the talent. And look, when you gave him time, which Georgia Tech gave him too much time at times, that was a lot of times in the same sentence, he was able to move the football effectively down the field. And so that shouldn't blow people away that, well, just because this guy's the perceived third string, which is probably because he got to campus literally like 4 weeks before the season started, or fall camp. But he was 17 of 31, 209 and a touchdown. He also added 73 yards on the ground. So he's almost solely responsible for 300 yards of total offense. So I think that, to me, it's a situation where you allowed him to be comfortable and he was able to do some things against you defensively. It can't always be, people. And I just want to say this. I know there's just, this fan base has such a stark group of differences, okay? And how they view this program and this team. And I'm trying to bring that together. And I understand that some people don't want to do certain things. And there's frustrations, and I get that. But it can't always be, well, we sucked, and so that's why they did well. No, they're allowed to make plays. And Jacoby Criswell made some good plays because he's not an awful football player. And you have 11 guys on this side of the field, North Carolina, that were fighting. Regardless of the conversation about the previous head coach now being the DC, that's whatever. This North Carolina team is not doesn't have any talent. Amarian Hampton ran for 137 yards and 18 carries. I know he ran for a lot last year in this game, and I can't remember what he did 2 seasons ago. But this to me is a situation where you have a guy that, look, I mean, just for lack of better words, he's going to run. I think he's one of the best running backs in the ACC, one of the best running backs in the country. It's just it's to me, it's an impressive effort of what they were able to do. Anybody who thought this defense was just going to come shut down everybody, there's been nothing that should tell you they would ever do that. Like, there's been no proof of this defense actually, and I'm talking about Georgia Tech, of this defense shutting someone out or shutting someone down, even against the lesser competition outside of VMI. They haven't been able to do that all year in terms of just like pitching a shutout or not allowing you to do anything. So it's a growing process for Tyler Santucci in that bunch. It's his first year in Atlanta. It's his first year with this group of players. Yes, you're 7 games into the season, but you're still obviously trying to mix and match. Jordan Vandenberg, putting him in the interior has been one of the best decisions that he's made, and Jess Simpson and Kyle Pope in general. So I really do believe that the game in itself was, yeah, it wasn't pretty for Georgia Tech. You nearly blew the game, but there's going to be two schools of thought. There's going to be the school of thought that's going to blame it on injuries and say, well, it was that, and whatever. There's going to be also the school of thought that you didn't play well. You played sloppy. Special teams was a little bit sloppy. The punt that literally, I mean, you want to talk about something, the inches, because everyone loves to have the conversation. I've seen this already. Well, if they would have gave us the fumble, or well, if they would have done this or that. Okay, well, if you want to play the what if game for, in favor of your team, let's play the what if game if you don't. What if the kid doesn't drop the ball in the end zone, and what if the kid doesn't drop the ball in the end zone for North Carolina and they go up? What would it have been? I apologize. 38-34. I can tell you this. You don't know that Jamal Haynes runs it for 65 yards plus for a touchdown, because the play call might have been different down 4 with however much, 44 seconds or however much time was left on the clock, or a minute plus on the clock. So you want to play the what if game for your favorite team, you got to play it on the other side of things. Let's also add into, what if David Shanahan doesn't corral that punt, and the UNC guy on kick punt return is bearing down on him and he picks it up, and now you don't have the extra 20 yards, and maybe it changes the play calling of what UNC wants to do. So if you're going to play the what if game, you have to play it on both sides. And for every single point that people want to make about, well, what if this didn't happen, what if that didn't happen, oftentimes there's enough points on the other side of the pendulum that could go against your team that you have to acknowledge if you're going to acknowledge the other side. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in that sense of how we view this game. Yes, it was ugly, but also, yes, you did find a way to win. Finding a way to win ugly games is still a win. It doesn't absolve the questions that I have, and I'm going to go more back in depth, rewatch the game. It is what it is. So you allowed Criswell to be comfortable, and he made some plays. Receiving wise, Amarian Hampton had led the team actually in catches, only 12 yards there for Hampton. J.J. Jones, Kobe Paysor, Bryson Nesbitt, 3 for 22. I did think you limited him. I thought he could be a weapon a lot, how Rondé Gadsden was against Syracuse. Copenhaver, 2 for 15, and arguably the biggest drop of the day. If that third ball is caught from Copenhagen, and he was targeted 3 times. If he catches one more, we may be talking about something, completely different. Ralph says, where's your producer? I don't know, man. Where's he been for the past 10 years? So they made some plays. Average yards per completion, 12 yards. They ran the ball for 5.9 yards per carry against you. A lot of questions defensively, but also, too, you got to recognize one of the better backs. It's still a college football team. This isn't a high school team you're going on the road and playing, regardless of what you think about one of their coaches on the staff. They played well. They played inspired. I mean, obviously, everyone knows the situation that they had with one of their players, and the cancer situation. And look, things like that galvanize a team. And UNC played inspired. They had lost 3 straight, now 4 straight. But it's not you're not always what your record indicates. And North Carolina is not a bad football team by any means. It's not just terrible. Everyone wants to sit there and talk about, well, it's awful. The term awful needs to be used for here's where I sit with this. The term so-and-so's awful, or that side of the ball is awful, has been wildly misused. There are awful defenses, and there are awful offenses. Let's try to be a little more educated and use that in the correct place instead of lazily putting a take on something because we're too lazy to look up a stat or to actually make a general judgment without our team's favorite color glasses on. That's what I'll say. Okay, going over the offense, we'll talk a little bit about Haynes King in general. I mean, it was an off game. He's hurt. You obviously have to hope to get him back to 100% because, guys, that's what your offense runs through. If you don't have Haynes King, and we saw teams are able to key in on Jamal Haynes, and until Buster Faulkner feels comfortable with whatever they want to do with Zach Pyron, I mean, I don't know that situation. I believe that Zach Pyron's capable of throwing the football. That would be a question I would like to have just in terms of that play calling decision. And like I said, just winning the game doesn't absolve of the end game decisions at times. So I sit there with Jamal Haynes had 170 yards. The kid's unbelievable in what he can do. If you don't have Haynes King going forward, though, it would concern me just in terms of, and I don't know how serious the injury is, but it would concern me in terms of, okay, teams are going to be able to key on that. We have to find someone else to beat them. That to me is important. Chad Alexander, love it. I mean, this kid is phenomenal. He's fun to watch. He brings so much excitement, and obviously getting put on scholarship. The kid's worked his butt off, and he has beaten out some 3-star and 4-star players to have a chance and be a part of this offense. And I think that's something that is admirable. And it's not just a feel-good story. Like, this kid is a solid football player, and so that's really cool. Malik Rutherford, Eric Singleton, not really big days for those guys. I mean, you had 6 catches combined between both of them. You also had 54 yards receiving combined between both of them. Wasn't a big day in the passing game. Wasn't a big day. And I'll say this to that. I mean, when you run the ball for 371 yards, you don't need a big passing day. I think the problem that a lot of fans have, and I don't even say I have a problem, it's more of a question that hasn't been answered for me about this team yet, is when it comes time, can you do it? When a team stuffs the run, and I think you're going to face some defenses that are going to be able to limit what you can do. I think I'll say this, and look, you can clip me, and I will be, I will be, I'll be so happy to if this team goes 10-2 and they just run the ball for 300 yards a game against everybody. We'll all be happy, and I'll be happy to say I was wrong. But I don't think that you can just go through the rest of your schedule and just say, well, and have this pride sense about yourself that we can just line up and run the ball against anybody. You have to have some type of passing game. 11 of 22 for 127 yards, 50% completion rate. He was a little off. It wasn't, and Mike says here, appreciate tuning in, Mike. Andy Demetra alluded to Haynes King having an injury during the Duke post game. Hope it's not serious. But him not coming back to the game, at least believe it's not minor either. Mike, don't want to speculate. But I do believe, in all seriousness there, Mike, there is some truth to what you said. Him not being able to come back, especially in a crunch time type of situation where you needed to convert some plays, tells me it wasn't good enough to come back in, but you obviously don't hope you obviously don't hope there as well. GT Boy also asked, and it looks like there's some. Aaron Holland says that Tylee Craft just passed away. Is that? I'm going to look that up. I hate to interrupt the live stream, but this is, if you don't know who Tylee Craft is, that's the young man that stage 4 lung cancer, and did he apparently pass away right after the game? Let's see here. Oh man. Yeah, North Carolina football. Wow. That's crazy. North Carolina football tweets, it is love and fond memories that we announced Tylee Craft has begun his journey on the other side. He meant so much to many and affected in ways we'll always be thankful for. He was a one of one. And while he won't be this in body, he will be watching over his endearing smile and endless positivity. On behalf of our family, his family, and our program, we sincerely thank everyone who supported Tylee during his battle with cancer. It means much more than you know. That's tough. And Aaron, thank you for pointing that out. That is absolute prayers. Absolute prayers. That's crazy. Wow. That's brutal. Man, way too young. I believe he was 23 years old, and that's just that's awful. That's just really awful. But it does remind you there's a lot more than to football. There's a lot more than just football, and there's a lot more to what life means than just that. And you can see that this was a passion-filled game for UNC, and that's crazy. That's crazy. So prayers out to him and his family in the UNC football program as well. That's tough. Wanted to add here, and it's kind of hard to segue away from that before we'll open up the phone lines. We mentioned the passing game was kind of a down game in that sense. I do think that you're going to have to have. I think you're going to have to show it at some point. And I'm not saying they can't. Please hear me when I say that. I'm not saying Georgia Tech can't throw the ball. They've chosen not to, only when necessary. It hasn't been a high-flying attack that I think a lot of people might have thought it might be. And look, I think also we need to be a little wary of the fact that Brent Key's mantras is rough and tough and being physical. Absolutely, absolutely, he's rough to physical. So I don't think you're going to see a air raid, high flying type of attack in Atlanta, but I think it's going to be balanced. But right now, and with Haynes King potentially injured, we don't know the extent of it. I'm sure that'll be asked in the post game press conference. You've got some weapons: Rutherford, Singleton, and then Luke Harpering. With just the amount of tight ends that went down, Ryland Goad goes down. Avery Boyd gets 2 catches for 19 yards. Can we please? And I'll just say this, and this is not prompted by anybody. This isn't. Can you please get the ball to Avery Boyd more? I mean, this guy's a mismatch. You can literally line him up in an H back. You can put him out as a receiver. You can put his hand in the ground on the line of scrimmage, and it's hard for people to guard him. Whatever he needs to fix, figure it out, because that kid's been in this program long enough. You got to figure it out. I like Avery Boyd. I don't understand why he can't be utilized more. Didn't play at all last week. Luke Harpering, going to be a dude. That's going to be a dude. He's obviously learning, growing, 2 catches for 36 yards. So it is what it is. But like I said, we're going to open up the phone lines here and want to hear from you. Want to hear from you here over the next 15 minutes or so, because as you know, fellas, folks, and beautiful people, got a big one down in Baton Rouge tonight. Big one. Saturday night in Death Valley. It's going to be a fun one. LSU Ole Miss. So I got to get ready to get out of here fairly soon and try to beat some of the traffic that's littered across I-10 and I-12 in the Baton Rouge area. Did want to add, though, you didn't have to pass the ball in this game. I think at some point you're going to have to. It's more of a question of when it, like I said, I'm not saying you can't throw the ball. It's more of, can you do it when it's necessary? And I don't know if we've seen Georgia Tech put in that position to where you're either going to lose the football game if you don't throw it. We saw a little bit of that in the Syracuse game where they started to kind of boat race you, and Haynes King made enough plays to where it puts you back in a position. But I'm talking about like 2-minute drive, 4-minute drive, those type of drills where you're working. Like, can you do that in a game? And I'm not saying you can't. We just haven't seen a scenario where they've had to go and do that. So that's it is. Nancy said saw someone's daughter at pick Ole Miss. GT Boy says this: what's your honest grade on this team after 7 games? I think it's an average football team. I mean, I think that's where I'll sit in. Now we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines here. It's average. I would say about a B-, because I think things are better. This is still a team that there has not proven that they can they can win the football games ugly, but it's now without a little bit of thrill. You need to see them confidently win over an ACC opponent. And so to me, that's middle of the pack in the conference, about an average team, which I think if you're in the middle of the pack of the ACC, you're an average to good in between that football team. And I think I'd put Tech in the average portion of that. 5-2 though. I mean, look, if you're 5-2 and you're average, that's not a bad look either. And Pooty Glazer says, could have very well been 7-0. Once again, if we play this game, I can give you plays where you should be 3-4. So I don't like to play that game because a lot of people just want to talk about it, how it pumps up their own program. If you want to hear a Georgia Tech show where we're just going to sunshine pump until the sun actually comes up, this is probably not the show for you. If it is, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. All right. Once again, if you're on Twitter, we got over 200 people watching on Twitter. Make sure that you hop over. 300 people watching live on all the platforms. Let's open up the phone lines. Let's do it. We're going to open up the phone lines, like I said, and we're going to see what happens here. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. So I will put that on here, and I will put this here, and you can call the show 225-317-9613. We will take your calls, and we'll hear from you for the next 12 to 15 minutes if time allows, if you'd like to call in. But no, it's a good question. I want to go back through the comments here. Philip says, I'll take it. Way to run the ball. Yeah, you take the flooding in already for this first. What's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Dr. Bob from East Baton Rouge Parish.
Dr. Bob, look at you. You got us on speed dial. Walk me through, because there's a lot of negative Nancys and no shade to you there, Nancy, who is actually watching. A lot of negative Nancys, but it's way better to ask questions after a win, I would think, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to, say condolences and prayers for Tylee Craft and his family and the UNC football program right now. Lung cancer, I've seen a lot of it in the hospital. It is a very serious illness, and a lot of people don't make it. But just want to, remember that young man. And there's a lot of things that are bigger than football in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first thing that needs to be said. As far as the game goes, hard fought competitive game between two teams that I thought were pretty even. On the positive, just, what a, full circle moment for Jamal Haynes, considering the fact that he was almost cut from this team. To be able to get a 71-yard touchdown run against the defense coached by the guy who tried to cut him and said he was no good. Just what an incredible play for him. It wasn't Miami, but it was pretty darn close to that kind of feeling. As far as the negative, the only egregious thing to me that cannot happen going forward was breaking the huddle with 12 men when you have 3rd and 1 there with a chance to get a first down and end the game.
Yeah.
That is something that cannot happen. The rest of it, these are errors that occur just in the game. I think we were limited a little bit by Haynes King being injured. That certainly changed the game plan there in the second half of the fourth quarter. But got to credit the guys. This is a game under the prior regime that we would have lost. And, I never, people can mark it down. I said, I didn't know if Brent Key was the long-term solution to the program, but I thought that he would stabilize the program enough to make us a competitive team. And, we'll find out in the next year or two whether he's the long-term solution. But what a win. Hard-fought game. If I was still living up there in the Triangle, I certainly would have been there at the game. But, great win for the guys, even with all of the warts and, problems and all. But hopefully Haynes King being there on the sideline and not in the locker room at the end of the game is a positive sign. It'd be nice to get him back next week. And hey, this gives us a chance on national television against Notre Dame next week. So that's all I got to say, Bryce. I'll let you get to the other callers, and go Jackets.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Dr. Bob. Thanks so much for calling in. And, he makes a good point, everyone. And I know we had a couple people trying to call in, so make sure you get those calls in. If someone's on the line, obviously don't call in. Nancy does ask, is it a coaching error? We'll go to the phone lines because you can't hear me when I'm talking. All right, thanks so much for calling in. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Jace from Chamblee, Georgia.
Jace, how you doing, brother?
Doing well. What I gotta say with what I think about the game is it was obviously very ugly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't like how much we were running near that end just because we knew the defense was going to sell out. But some context I think is important is we are 5-2. We have not started 5-2 in a decade. And if you told any Georgia Tech fan before this season started that we would start 5-2, I don't think anyone would have a problem with that. I think everyone would say that's a very successful start.
Yeah.
I totally get that we have some ugly wins to get through. There's some ugly things in Duke and obviously today, but in terms of what we've managed, when have we been able to make as many mistakes as we have and still win twice in a row?
That's a good point. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Jace. That's a really good point because you mentioned right there, and I know people want to talk about the previous regime, and I get all that, but it speaks to growth when you can make all the mistakes and still have a chance to win. Because 2 years ago that wasn't the case. If you make the mistakes that you've made at different points in this season, Jace, you're probably buried and done for. Now that's not now that's not the scenario, I should say.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. And people say, "Oh, we could be 7-0," and I get it, but we could also easily be 2-5. That's how the ball bounces. But the fact that we've been able to survive those mistakes, I've liked. Again, they shouldn't be happening. There are some things that are not acceptable, but I gotta say, I'm happy with where we are. I think it's very easy to be negative.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do agree with you, Jace. Appreciate you calling in, brother.
Thank you.
That's Jason. He's part of the Discord. Make sure you jump in and talk in the Discord. It's a good point to make, real quick. It's a really good point to make in terms of, and you can go ahead and call in 225-317-9613. Folks, outside of like 10 to 12, maybe 15 teams in college football, it's a lot about surviving the bounces that the ball goes. And I don't want to say it's luck, but it is surprise it is growth, because you have teams, and I feel like in college football, that where Georgia Tech used to be, situations like this would have, for lack of better words, they would have buried you. um, Now you're starting to see the tide turn where we'd have to get bigger data points, and someone had to tell me, like, what's Brent Key's record in one score games. You want to get that closer to 500, and then eventually you want to be a team that wins nearly every single one score contest, and then is starting to win games by multiple scores. But it's a process, and I think people wanted the progress of this program to take off because they felt the pressure of NIL. They felt the pressure. I never thought that this program would just be going from 6-6 ultimately up to 10-2. It's going to be progress, and it's building. So that's where I see that. All right, let's go back to the phone lines here. We got a caller in. Let's get this call in. What's your name, and where are you calling from?
This is Joey from Macon.
Joey from Macon. Joey, how you feeling after that thriller?
I mean, it was ugly, but I mean, it is a win. But my biggest concern is I just don't understand why Kyle Eford continues to play. Like, I mean, it's concerning to me if that's the best we have at linebacker.
Yeah, Joey, I mean, I think I mentioned this a week or two ago on the show. I said that I think that you've got some young players there that are probably more God-given talented. I like Taj Butler. He's just got to grow. We've seen a lot of Jackson Hamilton. Tatum is a guy that they'll play off and on. We're just going to call it what it is, though. I mean, honestly, is that you have a situation where you've got a guy who's good in the run and he's not very good in the pass. And when teams are in obvious passing downs, they're picking on him. In obvious packing situations, they're picking on him. So to your point, we'll have to see how it plays out. But you obviously hope that you can keep yourself in a situation where it doesn't burn you to the point where you straight up lose a game. But I do agree with you. I mean, it's about getting Taj Butler up to speed. Jackson Hamilton, how comfortable you feel with him there, and Tatum. But just kind of, bottom line, it does need to be addressed in some sort of way. I understand where you're coming from. I don't know where you go. They may just feel comfortable with his experience there and say we're going to have to live with the deficiencies in his game right now and hope those things improve.
Yeah, I will say I have been impressed with the run defense this year. I mean, I felt like balling Amari and Hampton up the way they did was pretty impressive because, I mean, UNC's run, the offensive line for them with running the ball is pretty good, even though they kind of lack in pass pro. But I felt like we did good in run defense starting the year.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. You're right. You want to get these comments real quick because they're talking about what you're talking about. Mike England says Eford has the effort, but his pass defense is awful. Domino says yes, Eford made a big mistake with that unnecessary roughness, nearly got his ass boosted out of the game. And then England says also that Hampton's a handful, and he is. And look, I mean, that's going to be an NFL draft pick. He's a good football player, and you got to tip your cap to the yards that he was able to get. But it is what it is. So hey, appreciate you calling in. Thank you so much.
Hey.
I want to get real quick because I've got a caller on the line here. Caleb says he passed away this morning. They didn't want to announce it. I guess UNC was playing with heavy hearts. Man, that's tough. It really is, Caleb. And obviously, prayers are out to him too. Putty Glazer. I know. I don't know. Pooty. I mean, Purdy. What are we doing here? If Haynes goes to the draft, why not throw the bag at Jackson Arnold if he hits the portal? I will tell you this. I don't think that it would be wise for Georgia Tech to throw the bag at a quarterback in the portal. Trenches. You need defensive line help. That would be where you throw the bag. And Maxwell does say no. As someone who's also cheers for OU, he was so bad when he was starting. Let's be honest with you. Let's be honest, folks. The quarterback that you have right now, a lot of people are laughing when he made his way over to Tech. So you never know what can happen. Arnold still has talent. And like Haynes King does, Haynes King turned into something in Atlanta. And it's not to say he can't either. All right, let's get to this call. A couple more before we get out of here. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Sir,
What's your name and where are you calling from?
this is Glenn Stevenson, Rome, Georgia.
Awesome, Glenn. How are you doing, brother?
I'm happy and I'm drained, but glad to get that victory.
Well, kind of talk to me your thoughts on the game. I mean, what's your big takeaway? Look, I mean, I keep saying, yes, there's things that need to be cleaned up, but it's much more fun to talk about those things and easier to have those conversations after a win rather than a loss.
Right. First of all, I heard a gentleman earlier say they're not sure on Brent Key. I've been a Tech fan for over 40 years. We're 5-2. Brent is the guy. He understands the culture. He understands the recruiting. He understands everything. And we're complaining we're not sure. We're 5-2. And I don't understand that. I want to get your feedback on this. The inconsistency of the offense.
Yeah.
There are times that Tech can take the ball with the variety and all of that and go right down the field on anybody. We've seen it 4, 5, 6 times this year when they needed to score, they go right down the field. But then they get into the stagnation, the staleness. That is going to kill us moving forward. If you don't think Miami and Georgia, they're going to be explosive. And we've got to pass the ball down the field. We've got to do it. Throw the ball.
Yeah, no, and look, I've said this, and I don't know if you heard me earlier when we were talking about this. I think at some point, look, you can't just have the idea that you're going to run for 250 plus against everybody. That would all be awesome. That would be great. But and like I said, I mean, people can come back at me if I'm wrong and this team runs for 250 plus against every team they play the rest of the season. But to your point, Glenn, to beat the teams that are considered, I don't want to say elite, but better than you, okay, that's fair enough. And by Vegas standards, like Tech will be an underdog against Miami and Georgia. Probably next week against North Carolina or against Notre Dame as well. So to beat these teams, you're going to have to show it. And it's like I said, Glenn, it's not that I think that they can't do it. This team just hasn't been in a situation outside of Syracuse when they started to be explosive, like to your point, Glenn, with Kyle McCord. They haven't been in a situation where they've had to get in a track meet with somebody. And that was something they were able to do at times last year. And so I don't know, Glenn, are we seeing that this team, and here's my question back to you, could this be a situation of where this team is going to play the way they feel like the game needs to be played within the game, and they're showing that they can win in different ways? Or is this something that really maybe just hasn't clicked this season and is not really a big part of who they are? I think that's the big question, and it's not saying they can't do anything. We just haven't necessarily seen it to the extent we saw it at times last year.
Right. You're right. Tech. This reminds me of the NFL. You're playing. It's hard. You got to continue to score late, and there are times that I don't think we're just trying to hold on. That is so risky. If that gentleman had caught that ball for North Carolina at the end, we'd have lost the ball game. But it shouldn't have came to that.
Yeah.
Maybe back before Bird missed the field goal, let Pyron do a few other things to get the first down. We were playing too conservative, and we almost lost the game because of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's, like I said, Glenn, I mean, a lot of people, and I think there's going to be two schools of thought here, okay? There's going to be one school of thought that tells you, well, it doesn't matter, we won the game. So you can't question anybody if you win the game. Win the game, that's great. But I think there are questions that can be asked, and that would be one that I would ask if I was in the press conference. Like, hey, let's go back to this. Is there, was there an option? Like, is it an RPO? Is there an option for Pyron to do something other than run the football? Because you're getting to the point, Glenn, and what we're talking about. There's enough film this season that when Pyron comes on the field, teams are going to be saying, okay, we're running, and you're going to see the linebackers creep up, the safeties, and they're going to be looking at their defensive coaching staff on the sideline, Glenn. They're going to be saying, hey, it's a run. It's a run. So until you give them something else, another look, I think that they're going to be able to key in on that, which is why North Carolina was able to get that stop on 3rd and 6. And I think a caller mentioned it earlier. Brutal penalty coming out of that timeout. You cannot have that. You cannot have that timeout. That sloppiness. That's not attention to detail.
Right. One more question. Do you remember power run before Haynes King? He actually looked pretty good passing the ball.
Yeah, no, he's capable. He's capable of throwing the football.
Right. Also, the Haynes is a good quarterback. That Haynes King in that Louisville 2023 in that second quarter, when Haynes was throwing that ball all over the place, touchdowns. Then we went stale in that third quarter. I always said that if we hadn't took our foot off the gas in 2023, you would have beat Louisville.
Oh yeah, no, and I think, and I'll say this, and I appreciate you calling in, Glenn. Thank you so much. We got two more callers we need to get to. To your point with what you were just saying there, with what Glenn was saying, if this team shows that they can put a defensive secondary on their heels in the passing game, folks, it's going to be super hard to stop them. Like, this is probably one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the ACC. And for people who say that I'm notorious for just dumping on the program, which is far from the truth, it's something where that you sit in. If this team opens up the passing game, then they're going to be so hard to stop. It's going to be ridiculous. So we're going to take one or two more calls, and then we're going to end the show. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit that like button. Just a couple things. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to get your chats in there that we can get them, make sure you use a super chat, and helps out the channel, helps out us, and what we're going to continue to do. Mike says, glad we saw what Harpring can do today, but what's the situation with our other tight ends? Mike, just basically they're hurt. I mean, you just got guys that are banged up. Guys that are banged up. So it is what it is. Jack says, is King okay? Obviously, that's something that everyone's wondering heading into the next game. All right, let's take this call right here. We're going back to the phone lines. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Bryce. This is Luke out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you better now.
Yep. Hey, yeah, this is Luke out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Awesome, Luke. Well, how you feeling, brother, after that one?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, yeah, there's certainly a lot of things we can look at and be upset about, and I've been in the chat a little bit when, right before the stream started, and I can see a lot of negativity, but, I'm kind of in that one of those two camps you mentioned, right? Win's a win. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying a win is don't have things to fix, but a win is something to be happy about walking away from.
Of course. No, and I think that, how you talk about it, Jack, or Luke, is that you'd much rather be having these conversations about the game after a win, because it's just a sour taste in your mouth if we're sitting here talking about that 3rd and 6 play and you lose the game. You know what I mean? Like, the win definitely helps you not be as mad about it, even though it is a frustrating thing.
Yeah, I think that what a lot of frustration is going to boil down to with this one is the same things we were seeing with Syracuse and Louisville, is that we're getting in our own way. Mention the personal foul on Eford, maybe one or two of the pass interference that is potentially questionable. The punt return that, is what it is. A lot of things where those game of inches, those kind of, as Brent puts it, complementary football. If you take the little things here and there and fix just one or two of those mistakes, this game has an entirely different looking outcome and a whole different feel coming down to the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. So, I think the defense did a pretty good job. Not ideal in the number of points that were put on them, but at the same time, you take the special teams play there, and we're only in the 20s range on points scored against them. You take the one big play by Hampton that stood, and it's not like we were giving up big plays all game. They did a pretty good job at holding their own for the most part, and then where it counted there right at the end of the game, holding them up from scoring that touchdown. So defense made me pretty happy. offense has a whole lot of things we got to take a look at. Obviously, Haynes being hurt is Haynes being hurt, and that's going to change, Buster's game plan as soon as he starts seeing what's going on the field. So all of those things taken into consideration, I can't be upset by how it's played out. There's a whole lot of things that are going to need some tweaking, but it's a good result at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. It's a good result. You take it, you move on, and the biggest thing is you learn. And it's so much better to learn after a win than it is after a loss. So I appreciate you calling in, Luke. Thanks so much, man.
Hey, for sure, Bryce. Take care.
That's Luke from Jacksonville. Does a great job. And we're going to take one more call here on the line, and then we're going to get out of here. But thanks so much for tuning in. Mike says, at least we're in the Bill Curry area. He was a coach. He was a coach when I was at Tech. He goes also one win away from bowl eligibility. Beacom says, man, I was about to lose my mind that Jeff would get that lucky Haynes went down. LOL, thank God for Jamal. Yeah, Jamal, he's a dude, man. That kid's an awesome story. I'll say this, there's the narrative that has been put out about Jamal Haynes and who was going to cut him and what it was going to look like has been taken wildly out of context. There's a lot of stuff that's not true in it, and then there's the truth in there. But it is what it is. That's social media, and that's fans blowing it up. But it's not what you think. And I think and I've said what it is and actually what happened, but it is what it is. So there's that. I will keep the phone lines open here about 5 more seconds. Nancy says, really? Nancy, I'll say this about the Jamal Haynes situation. Jamal Haynes was supposed to be an early enrollee when he came from high school. Jeff Collins and the staff brought in a mid-year transfer in January. It did not allow for him to be there, so he had to sit out and continue to wait. It wasn't a cut situation. It was Ross brought. Now, it doesn't mean that it wasn't offensive or whatever you want to call it, but it wasn't that he was trying to be cut. That happened later in his Georgia Tech career under a different head coach. That's all I'll say to that. That didn't happen when people were trying to make it sound like it happened. That's not me defending the previous head coach. It's just making sure that we have the truth on the actual situation. All right. This is our last call in here. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Jack. I'm out here in South Georgia right now at camp.
Awesome, Jack. Thoughts on the game?
Yeah, so I didn't get to watch the game. I was actually fishing, but I was keeping up with the game. I think really is probably the best you could ask for, going up against an old coach who definitely had a lot of fire to beat Georgia Tech. And I know a lot of people won't be happy with how many points we gave up and how we played overall, almost blew a lead. But with a QB going down in the middle of the game, not playing healthy, I really think it's the best you can ask for.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think it also adds to the drama. The Zach Pyron, Haynes King, it helps keep Pyron motivated to stay with the program. So I think the more guys you have working hard is always good for the team.
I agree. No, I agree. It's it is positive. I appreciate you calling in. Thanks so much, man.
Yes, sir. Go Jackets.
Stuff there from our man down in South Georgia. Did they announce what King's injury was? I haven't seen anything yet. Maybe it's on social media, but we will have to see. That was before he transferred to running back. No, he transferred to running back because about 2 or 3 staffers stood up and said, hey, let's try him here after he was going to be cut as a wide receiver. They moved him to running back. His first year running back was last season. I'm not trying to stand up or put down any coach. I'm just asking, let's get the information right. Let's get the information right with what actually happened. So it is what it is. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We appreciate people calling in, talking with us here live on the stream. Over 350 people watching live on all the platforms. I see a lot of people over there on X. Look, head over to the Crowded Booth YouTube channel. Hit subscribe if you like this content. We talk Georgia Tech on Sunday nights. Typically, we're not talking on Sunday night because we're talking today. And then Thursday nights. And then Mondays and Wednesdays, it's all college football as a roundhouse. And then on Saturday, or on Tuesdays, it's the It's the call-in show. And it's Talking Tuesdays, and we would love to have you. Thanks for tuning in. Georgia Tech, big winners. Big win. I mean, they needed it, and they got it on the road. Won their first ACC game on the road this season. That means a lot. Don't downplay it. Get back to work. It's Notre Dame in the Benz next week. We'll see you next time.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.